From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codename Holiday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. It is Thursday evening, which means it's time for some listener mail, some letters from home. We're going to hear a bunch of voicemails. We're going to learn about bridges and coincidences. We're going to learn about impossible propulsion that may be possible. We're going to have some crucial updates on an ongoing investigation, and we'll end with a lot of thank yous and maybe some jokes when you are walking by the gallows of modern civilization, strolling through the graveyard of society. We lift our voices. We cannot help but sing or whistle or maybe make sport. What kind of sports would you play?
Oh, all right. A veritable field of dreams is what we're all about here. I've never seen that movie. Have you guys seen Field of Dreams starring Kevin Costner?
Yeah.
With the baseball ghosts? Is that the deal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's during the halcyon days of the Costner Garth Brooks era.
Oh, okay. So are the ghosts, do they appear as like apparitions, like force ghosts in the Star Wars movies? What do they look like when you meet these baseball ghosts?
I don't want to spoil it for you, man. You got to build the field.
Fair enough.
They'll come.
Well, we're talking about baseball a little bit, and we're also talking about Superfund sites and how the twain meet. And remember how I joked about how when I first started hearing about Superfund sites, for the longest time I thought they were saying super fun sites, which one could apply that designation to a baseball field. So let's hear from one of our regular contributors, GP Scootch. Gents, in a recent episode, you asked for our stories and experience with local Superfund or hazardous waste sites. Well, I do have quite a few acres on which we live, so not exactly in my backyard, but there are actually two such sites nearby. About 6 miles from our home is a former lead mine. Actually pretty common in this part of southwest Missouri. This one, however, in Aurora, Missouri, am I allowed to say Missouri? Is that sound like I'm being too colloquial?
It's American English, dude.
Okay, well,
just go for it.
I don't know why I'm saying it. I feel like I'm pronouncing it the way the locals pronounce, so I'm just going to go with that. In Aurora, Missouri, has never been completely sealed and the surrounding grounds completely cleaned. So naturally, the city built a park bordering the site, including a baseball field we used at the high school when I was teaching / coaching there. The area was clearly marked and signage advised everyone to keep out. This meant most foul balls and some home runs hit out of the field along the first base side wound up inside the perimeter of the old mine. There are two big problems here. Baseballs are not inexpensive, and schools have budgets. There was no way to just leave them within sight. Also, rare is the parent who does not wish to have their son's home run baseball as a trophy. It became necessary to station an adult each game to be the official baseball retriever from the restricted area. Oof, do they issue them hazmat suits? Holy cow. More importantly, 12 miles away is the community of Verona, Fair Verona, Missouri. In the 1970s, the chemical dioxin caused the evacuation and federal buyout of the St. Louis suburb of Times Beach. I do not remember if you or the Stuff You Should Know guys did an episode on this. It was one of the first Superfund sites, and the town was destroyed, and the soil, to something like 4 feet deep, was removed and incinerated. The area is now, yes, a park. The contamination had been caused by road oil sprayed regularly to keep down the dust of the dirt and gravel roads. While all of this was discovered in the investigation, it was also discovered that the dioxin originally was sold to the company doing the spraying by a chemical company in Verona, where the dioxin-infused oil was a waste product. This plant still exists and operates today. Yes, cleanup was done, but over the last 50 years, it has experienced a series of problems. In 2019, the EPA investigated the area and found remnants of Agent Orange. In 2022, the EPA issued 16 citations against the plant and its safety programs. In 2022, ProPublica identified the area as a toxic air pollution hotspot. And in 2023, the EPA again sent representatives to Verona to hear concerns about the ProPublica and other reports to help explain the higher than average rates of cancer in the small town. Heard this story before. Through all owners, the problems continue. The state and federal government are involved, but as of just last year, cancer rates and violations both continue. My personal opinion is that if the products produced at the plant helped cause the evacuation of a community on the other side of the state, the originator of such substances might require a little more supervision, inspection, and involvement by regulatory agencies. Still, GP Scootch here, and use what you will. And we will. And we did, GP. This is fabulous. Not fabulous in the content of what this means, but this is exactly the kind of stuff we were looking for. Like, what is it like to live around this stuff? What does the government do with these as they pertain to communities? And in this situation, it sure feels like just kind of building something on top of it that, like, kids are going to be playing in. It's very dystopian feeling to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit, but I don't think so.
I don't think you are.
It feels a lot like brushing it under the rug, you know?
Right. Yeah. And we heard from Scootch quite recently as well, GGP Scootch, who hipped us to an obscene clone fall. Which still is a great Shaggy Dog story, but we know this is serious business, Scootch. And this may be in reaction to a letter from another conspiracy realist about the Westlake landfill. There are tons of these things, and a lot of them don't make any national news. Like, to your point, Noel, we need the public to be more aware of these things, because often the way you hide this sort of stuff from your constituency or your municipality is to make it one of the public commons, right? Make it a public area. Here is a park. Here is where all the kids can go play. It's tough.
Well, the implication being it's fine, right? Because we wouldn't have done this if it weren't fine, because this is the most vulnerable of our population that we're telling it's okay to go there. And yet the whole baseball retrieval thing, for some reason, it makes me think of The Sandlot. You know how there was that neighbor with the big scary dog, and in order to get the balls, they had to go, do battle with this giant monster kind of mutant dog. I just can't imagine how comfortable these parents or teachers would be having to go scavenge in what they know is a potentially contaminated area just to get back a baseball.
And recently, I think just as recent as a few years ago, it was 2021, I think, the U.S. Supreme Court made an increasingly rare unanimous ruling regarding Superfund sites and the Clean Water Act. All to say, people know there is a problem, right? And the time window on this problem could be quite elongated, right? Because exposure to some of the chemicals or contamination of Superfund sites, the bill doesn't come due there sometimes for decades, right? But, trust us, it's fine. Take your kids to the playground.
Well, I just found a EPA.gov page where you can search for Superfund sites near you. And I just narrowed it down to Georgia. And I guess I had to have known this when I was, working for public radio back in the day. But Augusta, which is where I was stationed and where I grew up, it seems like it comes up on the list more than just about any other place in the state. There's, I think, 5. Let's see. There's only one in Atlanta, in Fulton County, the West Side Lead plant. And that's the only, I'm not seeing any in adjacent counties here in Atlanta. One in Athens. Yeah. But, the whole deal with these is we don't really know what the long-term ramifications of some of this stuff is. And we often see scientists and researchers trying to draw lines between these sites and rates of cancer. And they're often a little bit hard to kind of draw those direct lines, those direct correlations.
Yeah, and a Superfund site, to be clear, is not always contaminated with the same kind of nasty stuff, right? It's a group term similar to saying cancer or saying chair. So the contamination in one site may indeed be more dangerous than the contamination in another site, or it may have a different set of deleterious health effects. So it's rough and it's terrifying because, again, of that window of time. To your point, Noel, yes, there are searchable databases, but a lot of it is not out there in your face.
Right.
And these kind of warnings, I would argue, do need to be out there in your face. You need to know immediately your location, your proximity to a Superfund site, and your possible exposure to anything within that site, because they're also not all cleaned up to the same level.
That's right. And also to know what the cleanup efforts ongoing, look like, or if they are ongoing. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. Augusta has 3, but it does seem to be one of the most super funded cities in the state of Georgia. Cedartown is another one that has 3 as well, but that's the maximum number that I'm seeing on this list. And of the overall number in the entire list, it looks like there's 1,901.
Mm-hmm. Which doesn't cover the full extent of possibly contaminated sites in the U.S., because I think Superfunds didn't become a thing until 1980,
right,
which was a long time ago now, but still there was also a lot of other dirty stuff. The soil was sour around the U.S. well before 1980.
Well, these are the ones that just get that designation, and there's obviously some bureaucratic red tape that has to be, sifted through to even get these to be recognized.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder if anybody has been able to lobby or buy their way out of a Superfund designation, or
certainly a good question, Ben, because do you get wind? No pun intended, I guess, if we're talking about fallout or the way contamination can spread of this in advance and then kind of try to call in a favor. Certainly wouldn't be a good look if the public found out. But again, these aren't exactly making front page headlines.
Yeah, there are, I guess, unfortunately, there are entities or groups that would prefer you not know about a local Superfund site or prefer that something not be designated as one. But probably the most important part of this conversation is that searchable database that you brought up there, Noel. Can you tell people the easiest way to find it?
Yeah, I just Googled Superfund sites, and this EPA list came right up, and you can search it by state and by keyword. And like I said, it's not a massive, 2,000 roughly is a pretty big number in terms of this kind of thing, I guess, but maybe I would have thought there might have been more, but you can search and make sure that you know where they are in your area. But I don't know, what do you guys think about, again, all Superfund sites aren't created equal. And, one would hope that if they're building a baseball field or a park, that the areas adjacent to them wouldn't be like an outright death trap. But do we trust them to make that assessment, or what do you guys think?
Yeah, there are two main paths that the congressional act, like the Superfund deal, allows for. The first is what's called removable actions. That's the more short term, where you just take the dirty stuff out. And then there are remedial actions, which are more long term, which is where you try to you attempt to make the thing a usable piece of land again, right? This remediation, which they try to make the potentially responsible party, or PRP, pay for it, the person or the group who did the pollution. So in theory, when things are properly cleaned out and brought back to some kind of baseline of safety, in theory, then that land and all the stuff around it is okay, is safe. The problem is, how often does the practice jibe with the theory, right? Or the letters of the law?
I think that's very well said, Ben. Matt, you got anything else to add before we take a break?
Yeah, I want to shoot people over to that ProPublica piece that was talked about in the message. It is titled, quote, "When Home is a Toxic Hotspot." It was written December 15th, 2021, and it's a rather extensive piece on Verona, Missouri there, and just what the folks were going through at the time, just being aware of these substances, in the air, in the soil, in the water, and not being able to do anything about it, but still having to just live your life.
That's the thing, too, you mentioned in the soil, because a lot of these things can leach into the soil. And, of course, they take tests over time to make sure that the levels are allowable or like within certain acceptable, ranges or whatever. But some of these pits that they, bury some of these materials in, certainly that was the case in one near where I was growing up in Augusta. They have these linings that can over time be compromised and can leak. So even if the lining or whatever is the mitigation, it has to be maintained and has to be like checked on. And sometimes, with budgets and stuff and just shuffling and bureaucracy, sometimes those things can fall between the cracks. So yeah, just something to keep an eye on. Well, let's take a quick break, have a word from one of our sponsors, and then come back with another piece of listener mail.
And we've returned. We're going to jump to the phone lines and hear first from Joe.
Hey, Matt, Noel, and Ben. I had a thing I'd like you guys to look into. My name's Joe from Pittsburgh. I seem to be the only one that finds it extremely coincidental that on January 28th of 22, there is a bridge in a area of Pittsburgh that collapsed early in the morning, and usually this bridge has massive amounts of traffic. There was like there was a mass transit bus and then 2 passenger vehicles on this bridge when this bridge collapsed. The coincidental part about it is President Joe Biden was flying to Pittsburgh that morning to pitch his infrastructure bill. What better way to get to, chum up support for your infrastructure bill than the city you're going to pitch your bill has a bridge collapse? I find it extremely odd. I've had a few people that I've spoke to. I've also emailed multiple podcasts about this. Can't seem to get anybody to look into it. Don't think I'm crazy, but just not a coincidence. Thank you.
Mm. Thank you for calling. 10 people were injured, but non-fatally, if I recall correctly.
Yes, you can find an article right now in, where is this? Pittsburgh Magazine. And it says 10 people escape serious injury in Forbes Avenue, Forbes Avenue Bridge collapse. And that is a bridge that goes over a place called Fern Hollow, Fernhollow Creek. That it really did collapse on the morning that President Joe Biden actually was headed to Pittsburgh to go and pitch his infrastructure bill. And there is a picture you can find on Getty Images of President Biden standing there shaking hands with somebody, and the background is the collapsed bridge.
You can also see video of it on New York Times. I mean, this was published pretty widely. You can see the immediate aftermath, and we're just very fortunate no one died because it's heinous.
Yeah, there really is you could see a picture of the bus, the red bus that fell down, and one of the passenger vehicles that landed or ended up on its roof, like laying on the ground. It looks horrifying. It looks like people died, but again, thankfully they did not.
Well, I mean, perhaps an opportunistic photo op, but it does appear that this bridge should have been condemned many years prior because of, disrepair and issues.
Well, yeah. Well, you see, here's the problem. We've been talking about infrastructure in the United States for how many years now, guys?
I mean, when we first started the video series, it was one of the things I was gonna write an episode about it, but for a long time, the American public didn't care, right?
Yeah.
And that's hopefully slowly changing, but yeah, we have on the audio side of this as a group, we've been talking about infrastructure for quite some time, and thankful, by the way, for anybody else who does so. Even, John Oliver did a great piece of it on it on Last Week Tonight.
Yeah, and just the need to revamp a lot of the bridges. I mean, really, it's bridges, roads, levees, all kinds of things that exist in states across the United States that
Water
require
treatment.
Oh yeah,
Power grids.
Everything. It all requires constant upkeep just to make sure things are running smoothly, but often state and federal budgets go to other things because other things take priority over the stuff that's already working, right? That's at least the perception that often occurs in our own minds, because you don't think about the bridge when you go over it. If you're going across Spaghetti Junction here in Atlanta,
I do sometimes.
I do. I do every
It freaks
time.
me out a little bit, to be honest.
I've walked the length of the highest one non-consensually. And I wish more people thought about the fact that they are in a very dangerous situation. No matter what, it doesn't matter if you have easy listening playing in your car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're at a high speed in some tight curves. And, the rule with driving and playing the dark lottery of traffic is always, you can do your best, but it doesn't really matter if you do your best. It matters that everybody else adheres to it. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
We were doing a live tour a while back, and a bridge on I-85 here in our fair metropolis, a segment of that just collapsed under, I'll still say it, murky circumstances.
Because of some fire that happened underneath that weakened it or something that was supposedly caused by a errant crack pipe, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. They caught a shopping cart on fire. And the murky
I still
part
have video of that incident, by the way.
Yeah. The murky part of that, even if that, those official public conclusions are true in the I-85 case, how horrifying is it that bridge was hanging on by such a thread? Like, how many bridges in America are one crack pipe on the underbelly away from collapsing right now?
Well, that's the whole point of this. Okay, let's get back to this Forbes Avenue bridge, again, that's going over that place called Fern Hollow Creek in Pittsburgh that collapsed the day President Biden showed up. According to the Pennsylvania DOT, this bridge is owned by the city of Pittsburgh. It was built in 1970, and it had a very recent inspection report as of that date in 2022 that rated both its deck and its superstructure, the entirety of it, as, quote, poor, which is not good. And it's one of 80 bridges in that county, Allegheny County, that were rated as in poor condition overall. So one of 80 in that one county, one of them collapsed. It just happened to be, a perfect timing somehow. I don't know, guys. I don't think it's a matter of, it is a coincidence, but I don't think it's a matter of collapsing a bridge on purpose. I think it's just actually the state of a lot of the infrastructure.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that.
It would be the kind of place where it would make sense already to visit. But I bet there were some people on Biden's team that were like, yes, that's a win.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So here's a helpful rubric or heuristic for thinking through these kind of things. When we question coincidence or causation or conspiracy or correlation, et cetera, we have to also ask ourselves, what else happened on that day, right? If the president at the time had not visited on that day, Pittsburgh's a big city, and it is quite possible that we could draw another troubling correlation between some other event that happened in Pittsburgh at that time. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying that's a helpful critical thinking approach to some of this stuff.
Totally.
And to Noel's point about opportunism, yeah, I agree. Absolutely. But opportunism is not the same thing as conspiracy. It's just cynical coattail riding of disaster.
Quick, snap that picture. Let's go. All right, guys, do you think we have time for one more before we get out of this segment?
I think so.
Okay, here we go. Let's jump to Matt, the firefighter.
Hi, guys. How you doing? Been listening to you for a long time, for several years now. Just wanted to give you a shout. My name's Matt. I am a firefighter. I've been a firefighter for about 12 years. One thing that they might not want us to know is that firefighter turnout gear has a chemical called PFAS, P-F-A-S. It is a known carcinogen. It causes cancer in firefighters. And all of our turnout gear, the gear that we wear whenever we go into fires, has PFAS in it. It is causing us cancer. They know that it does this, and yet they have no turnout gear that's NFPA approved. That NFPA is National Fire Protection Agency. They create the national standards for our turnout gears, as well as many, many other topics. But anyways, they know that our turnout gear causes cancer, and we still have no alternative. We have no alternative turnout gear that we can purchase and wear that is NFPA approved, that does not cause cancer, that does not have PFAS in it. So I encourage you guys to look into that and to do an episode on that, because it's a big deal. Firefighters have, depending on which study you read, firefighters have between a 200 to 350% increased chance of catching cancer because of the work we do. And I think that this is something that people should know about. Thank you for hearing me out. Wish you guys the best. Love your work. I'm going to continue listening to you guys. Good luck to you. Talk to you later. Bye.
And good luck to you, Matt the firefighter. Thank you for being a firefighter. I think they're some of the most unappreciated professionals in society.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, thank you for letting us know about that. Previously, when we've talked about these forever chemicals like the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, that's PFAS. When we've talked about those in the past, we've talked about all the stuff that they're in, including, mostly we talked about firefighting chemicals, right? The foams that are often used in the process of fighting a fire, something a firefighter would wield, right?
Flame suppression, flame retardants, as they were called as a general term.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about those things and how dangerous they can be if you get exposed to them a lot. One thing we didn't consider, what the firefighter is actually wearing on their body. It makes sense that these pieces of heavy clothing would also be treated with something like this that would be a repellent or a retardant of fire. Oh my gosh, you guys, in what was the thing that Matt referenced, the National Fire Protection Association? It's a thing you can look up right now. And recently, several organizations, including NIST, put out, this is January 2016, they put out a report about how wear and tear on firefighters' worn equipment is going to actually cause those pieces of equipment to release even more forever chemicals than the firefighter is already being exposed to just by wearing them consistently. And it's just increasing the potential to have cancer. It's like increasing your probability that you will one day develop cancer.
It does appear there's a pretty significant class action lawsuit against PFAS manufacturers with thousands of firefighters across the country suing. I believe 3M is one of the parties named to manufacture these types of chemicals. And I believe the FDA only recently just passed something that limits the amount of this stuff that can be in drinking water, which seems like we're behind the times on this one.
Oh, yeah, and that stuff is in everything. There was these forever chemicals were found in sources of water that should not have any forever chemicals in them, because that water is theoretically dropping from the sky, from clouds and rainwater into sources higher up, like in mountains that go into springs that then flow down and get filtered naturally, and yet somehow there is still PFAS in them. Yikes. You can read a statement, it's actually a joint statement, from the International Association of Firefighters, or the IAFF, and the Metropolitan Fire Chiefs Association that discusses this exact thing. Again, it's going to just what do you do as Matt the firefighter when you know the stuff you're going to wear to go fight a fire is probably going to contribute to you getting cancer one day. And right now there is, as Matt said, nothing else you can do, because you can't just wear civvies or regular clothes when you go in to fight a fire, because those are flammable. We need an alternative, basically. So this is a call to all you entrepreneurs out there who are good in textiles, or maybe have some friends or family in the textiles industry. Create something new that firefighters can wear that don't have these specific chemical treatments. That's all I've got, guys.
You're here.
All right, and with that, we will take a break and then hear more messages from you.
And we have returned at the conclusion of our weekly listener mail. We wanted to begin with a critical update. If you just had this on in the background and you were, kind of tuning out, we've all been there. Please, snapping the fingers, conspiracy realist, hear us and hear us well. I'd like to play a message from Rob with a crucial update on something that I know has been on everybody's mind. Here we go.
Hey guys, this is Rob from the armpit of the Midwest. Just an observation here. I'm watching Rebel Moon Part 2, and I just wanted to chime in on the humble farmer. Within the first 30 seconds of this movie, the word humble was uttered, and I couldn't help but remember your fine episodes. The humble farmer has been mentioned, and it just made me laugh. Made me laugh pretty hard.
Thank you. That is why you tune in, folks, for the up to the minute breaking news on the humble farmer. We brought the Scar Giver back. Did you see that? That's the name of the second part.
Yeah, it's getting razzed pretty hard.
Rebel Moon 2, the Scar Giver.
It's Rob, same guy who called it about hard candy last week.
Rob, appreciate your update there. And thank you on behalf of everybody tuning in. Honestly, behind the curtain, I just put that in because I love those updates.
It's the humble farmer effect.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is. Ask your sociologist friends about it. We have something else that I think may be a future episode. Would love to hear your thoughts, fellow conspiracy realist. It comes from Secret Soup Can. Secret Soup Can, you said the following. Good morning, lads. I ran across this article this morning. What do you think? Love the show. Keep up the great work. Secret Soup Can sent us a link that you can and should read if you are interested at all in the following conversation. It comes to us from the debrief.org. NASA veterans' propellantless propulsion drive that physics says shouldn't work just produced enough thrust to overcome Earth's gravity. This is big if true.
Bullshit.
Whoa, hot take.
Sorry. No. I've read the same article, and I just don't believe it until I see it happen.
That's the thing, too, right? This is something I think is good for us to unpack because what was it, the EM drive a few years back, the electromagnetic drive that was supposed to revolutionize space exploration? This is the story of a guy. This one is a story of a guy named Dr. Charles Bueller.
Yeah,
Bueller?
Ferris.
who's a NASA engineer and the co-founder of an organization called Exodus Propulsion Technologies. And their claims are pretty extraordinary, and thus far they have not been universally confirmed. Let's just give you a piece from what the doctor said. He is a NASA engineer. He's not just some random guy. He told the debrief the following, quote, "The most important message to convey to the public is that a major discovery occurred. This discovery of a new force is fundamental in that electric fields alone can generate a sustainable force onto an object and allow center of mass translation of said object without expelling mass." All right, just unpack that. Currently, that's not a thing outside of science fiction. Like the idea of this technology, I'm with you there, Matt. I also thought this felt a little bit vaporware, like when we were talking about biotech earlier.
Expelling mass meaning what?
Well, like, okay, imagine you're burning jet fuel, right? You watch the launch of anything that's going to escape Earth's gravitational pull. It is shoving stuff out the tail end, right? Through the form of gas that's ignited. This is basically saying that nothing is going out the tail end. It's just turned on, and then the flow of what? Electrons?
Propels
That it just goes.
It's like cold fusion-esque kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's like all the good stuff without any of the bad stuff or any of the byproducts or violent reactions.
I don't want you to get me wrong. I think it's amazing. Like, oh, yeah, sweet. Just show me. Don't tell me. That's all.
Fair.
Yeah, to document his team's discovery and in an attempt to show the process behind their work, this guy who's leading the charge over at Exodus, which is, again, a private company, he presented his findings at something that I was not aware of, the Alternative Propulsion Energy Conference, or APEC, not to be confused with OPEC. This has a lot of career engineers, and then it has a lot of what we would call enthusiasts, right? Interested people. They may not have a degree. They may not, work for NASA or a defense corporation, but they are intensely interested in the concept of new propulsion technology. The debrief once referred to this as the world's most exclusive and strange anti-gravity club, which sounds like it'd be cool to go to at one point. We went to a MUFON conference before. That was fascinating.
Yeah, if we can get an invite, APEC, send it our way.
Mm-hmm. We're talking specifically to you, Tim Ventura.
Isn't anti-gravity just in general? I mean, I know it describes a concept of defying gravity through various means, but in my mind, it immediately conjures hovercrafts or like magical flying cars.
The Nazi bell or something,
right,
Glock, and so on. Yeah.
I know hovercrafts are real, but the idea of being able to float without any byproduct, so just kind of like whatever it might be, electromagnetic or otherwise.
Right.
Things that don't exist is what I'm getting at.
Things that have not been proven to exist, right? Even that might be a little bit too careful on our part. But if we look at his background, we do know that he is the top expert at NASA in something called electrostatics. And again, he's very careful to say, this endeavor is not affiliated with my day job, but he does work with concepts that apparently he informed his work on this propulsion alternative. And he says, we've been looking into this. They call it propellantless propulsion. And they said they've been working on it for over 20 years. And they found the answer under their proverbial noses, electrostatics, which he had already been working on. And I don't know, I've looked into it and I see a lot of excitement. I see a lot of sound and fury. I don't know what it signifies. We also saw different phases of testing that they rolled out, like testing in a vacuum. We saw an explanation of the materials that they try to use to create this reaction or this phenomenon. And they started seeing precipitous results in 2022. Just for context here, this article from the debrief was published on April 19th, 2024. I'm hesitant to get too into the weeds of the technology without a lot more research on our end. I think this could be an episode, or the overall idea of the alternative propulsion industry.
Isn't it being described as a new force?
Yeah. He said that in a quote. Yeah, capital N, capital F, new force, which sounds cool. It sounds like it's in the Star Wars franchise. I would watch it.
I will say that, electrostatic energy is interesting. And I've seen it certainly on small scales, right? Sure. If it's what I'm thinking of, even just in terms of static electricity delivering a shock or being able to charge a balloon and have it kind of propel, it's magnetized essentially using electrostatic force. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not a scientist here, but I don't quite, and maybe it's not for me to understand how that could be scaled in such a way where anything in its path wouldn't be obliterated.
There's another aspect to it too, that, we always want to dig when we hear about a private company. If you go to their website is pretty much like a dummy site with a place where you can put your email. You're not going to see, at least on that site, you're not going to see a bunch of information about showing your work, means, methods, testing. The debrief article is actually much more in depth than the website. And that doesn't mean that it's inherently fake. It just means that we, the public, need the information explained in a way that the layperson can understand. Because full disclosure, folks, the four of us recording this evening, and maybe you listening along at home, we do not have expertise in the bleeding edge of electrostatic science. I think we understand it, right?
Clearly, that's the case from my ham-fisted attempt at describing
Not
it.
at all.
And when you do dig for information on this, you kind of see the same press release regurgitated a bunch of times, and with some questions, from the debrief, but no real data or video or anything tangible to back it up.
So I'm bringing this up because I think this would be, thank you, Secret Soup. I'm bringing this up because I think this is an episode based on the other similar efforts that have happened in recent years, like the EM drive, the quantum drive, both of which remain very controversial. Apparently, they got some level of result enough to encourage interest in the international sphere and in the sphere of investors. But neither of those have been tested in space. The quantum drive got really close. There was a launch in November of 2023, but it was laid low. A failure in the satellite's electric systems, unrelated to the drive, scuttled the test. And at the risk of sounding too cynical, it calls to mind the similarities of apocalyptic cult leaders when they're like, hey, the world was definitely going to end, but we got the dates wrong. So stick with me, stay in the cult, And I'm not accusing these guys necessarily. I'm not accusing these guys of being con artists. We haven't spoken with them at all. We just need much more information. And if anything, this is a clarion call to those of us playing along at home. If you have expertise in this, material science, engineering, physics, propulsion, if you are a literal rocket scientist, we want to hear from you.
Yes. And I just signed us up via their website that you mentioned, Ben, for their emails.
I did just want to mention, I found a conversation about this on Reddit, and somebody sort of, again, don't know, can't really measure this person's bona fides, but said the amount of force in the low millinewtons means that this whole setup is highly dubious, as that's such a small force that anything can influence the measurement. I myself have had setups using electrostatic forces where the mere presence of my hand near the apparatus caused severe measurement errors at the millinewton level. Though, to be fair, the actual forces I then measured were higher than the variance due to that. So even that's way above my pay grade, but it does seem like they're smarter people than me out there asking questions about this debrief article.
Well, human thought has no real concept of intelligence. Don't beat yourself up.
Fair. Thanks.
So, and with that, this is going to be an episode in the future. Your help, your expertise, folks, is invaluable in that regard. We're going to end today with some letters from home. We had so many beautiful pieces of correspondence to our recent episode on supplements. So thank you. A partial list to Red Scott Witch, Herbalist, Luke, Tokioki, Brock Ness, Commandant Squatch. That was a very interesting one. Tommy, Saturday Morning Cartoons, The Legend Big Shucks, They Call Me Frederick, have confirmed that wasn't our pal Matt. Blue Michelle, Licensed Mutant Ninja Turtle, Otter Dog, Anonymous Corey, Call Me Al, Baron Eaton, KTRN, and Sosa. Hold the phone. We've got one returning person. You guys remember the person who used to write all those weird jokes to us?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember the name, but I remember the jokes.
There was a 69 involved.
Yes. Yeah. Nice. There was, this comes to us from Down Low Joe, a subsidiary of Humorous Harry. That was the name. And he says, how about this? Noel, Matt, pick a number 1 through 10.
6.
Okay. Did you hear about the guy that left his smartphone on the stove? It ended up being a real burner phone. Doc, if I get like a rim shot and a groan. But Matt is scratching his forehead here. So, Matt, why pick a number 1 through 10? It's not 6.
Number 1.
Number 1. Do you know why?
Number 2.
Okay. Keep this part in because, boy, number 1. All right. We can't win them all, Humorous Harry. Where do crabs go for a drink, you guys? To the sandbar.
Oh, wow.
Okay, folks. With that, we're so glad and thankful to every person, entity, meat, or otherwise who
crabs,
took the time.
If there's any
crabs as well,
Oh, wait, I've got a joke. What's worse than having a bunch of ants in your pants? A bunch of uncles.
Why did you? We were already in the depths.
How do comedians play golf with comedy clubs? Oof. Okay, I think we've exercised our full budget of sound cues. Go ahead, join the show. We'd love to have you. Thanks so much for tuning in, and tell us what's on your mind. We try to be easy to find online.
That's right. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook, on YouTube, and on X, FKA Twitter. On Instagram and TikTok, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Hey, do you want to call us the way Matt and Joe did? Call 1-833-STDWYTK. It's a voicemail system. You've got 3 minutes. Give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you don't like using your phone for such activities, why not use it to send us an email? We are
the folks who read every single email we get, as you could tell from that recent round of jokes. Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.